Our scripture this morning comes from Psalm chapter 139, verse 13 through 18. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you. This is the word of our Lord. I was very excited when Pastor Joe told me about this sermon series for this month and asked me to preach on it. It's a topic that hits very close to home for me. It's something that I've wanted to preach about for about 4 years now. This has been about 4 years in the making, this sermon. And last week, the pastor started off the sermon series talking about the image of God and what that means. And if you didn't get to hear it last week, I recommend going to the website and taking a listen, as it was very powerful. The idea of having the perfect image, I think, can be looked at in two ways. I think for many, we hear the word image and think of outward appearances. But I think image can reflect who we are on the inside and the out. So much of our society has gotten caught up in being and looking a certain way. Many of us are constantly surrounded by comparison, no matter how much you may try and avoid it. It has become so hard to feel beautiful, special, or worthy. So many of us spend our days searching for acceptance, searching for ways to feel good about ourselves, and we spend our days looking to others for validation that we are beautiful just the way we are. And social media feeds into looking to others to define our own worth. Nowadays, there's even a dating app that focuses on one initial look at a person. If you think they're attractive, you swipe one way, and if you think they're not, you swipe the other. We're not even taking time to get to know people anymore. Our fingers are just swiping right or left at one initial glance. Whatever happened to don't judge a book by its cover? Then there's Facebook and Instagram, where people can like your photos. But that's only after you edit them, you add a filter, and you put the right caption. Many of us are so desperate to feel worthy, we're hiding who we really are and letting others define how we should feel about ourselves. Well, let me tell you this. Your worth is not defined by how many likes you get on Facebook. Your worth is not defined by how many followers you have on Twitter. And your worth is not defined by how many likes you have on your Instagram picture. Your worth is defined by God. Again, your worth is not defined by how many likes on Facebook, not defined by how many followers on Twitter, not defined by how many double taps on Instagram pictures. Your worth is defined by God. And as I'm saying this, I wish I could say I wholeheartedly live my life this way every day, but I would be a hypocrite. I'm here with this message today because it's a struggle for me every single day that I'm sure so many can relate to. Middle and high schoolers, I hope you pay attention to this entire sermon, but if not, pay attention right here. Your worth is not defined by relationships. Your worth is not defined by who your friends are. Your worth is not defined by whether or not you're in a relationship. And maybe there's adults here struggling with this as well. But to the middle and high schoolers, I remember being in your shoes. I remember constantly putting myself down because I was single, wasn't catching attention of every guy. But your worth is not defined by other people. Your worth is defined by God. You will find yourself feeling worthless and broken if you look to others to validate how you feel about yourself. You don't need to change who you are to be accepted and loved by God. When you start to change who you are to get to the approval of others, you're going to lose yourself. If you set your eyes on God and remember that He made you to be exactly who you are, you will know your worth. It's not by being friends with popular people, and it's not found through dating. When you find your worth in God, you'll find yourself surrounded by those who think you're beautiful, handsome, incredible. You'll find yourself surrounded by those who love you for who you are because they see your confidence through God. And if you change who you are, eventually you're going to become so tired and upset at hiding who you are that you're going to break. But when you learn to turn to God to know your worth, you'll find joy and love by being who you were created to be. Think about how many times a day you check in a mirror, how much time you spend getting ready. Every hair is in place, the outfit matches, you have the shoes on, your makeup's ready, you're hiding every flaw. I can remember back in college, it was a whole week process to get ready for a dance. It was like hair mask, face mask was Sunday nights, and then it was practicing the hair and practicing the makeup and then trying something new because we didn't like the first one. Then it was the day of the dance. We would run back from class, probably didn't hear the last 30 minutes of those lectures because it was, I have to go get ready for the dance. We'd spend 3 to 4 hours getting ready for the dance to get some pictures. We'd get the pictures, we'd go to the dance. As soon as we got there, our hair's falling out because we're dancing, the makeup's melting off, and it was really dark inside. They did cool lighting, but you couldn't see anyone. So we spent all this time getting ready just to hide who we are so we can go to the dance. If you know me, you know I love all things Disney, so of course I had to connect back to at least one Disney movie in the sermon. A few years ago, Disney released a live-action version of Cinderella, and it took the story to a whole new level. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. And while her ball gown was absolutely stunning, the prince was very charming, there was one quote from that movie that stood out and still comes to mind often. Cinderella standing in her tattered clothing, no ball gown, no glass slippers, no fancy updo, and no makeup, says to the prince, "The greatest risk any of us will take is to be seen as we are." We've gotten so caught up in finding our worth in others, we put a mask on afraid of what people would think if they knew and saw the real us. And while I'm talking a lot about outer image, I think this goes for who we are on the inside as well. I mentioned earlier about having that perfect caption to go with pictures to help us get more likes. Most of the time it's some witty or inspiring quote, and it's not even ours. What if we just put our own thoughts out there, and what if our captions became what we actually said? Think about how much you modify your personality based on who you're surrounded by. Are we ever truly ourselves with anyone, or do we put on a facade so that we can act the way we think others would approve of? And whether or not we want to admit it, so many of us have become ashamed of who we are. We would never say it out loud, but our actions speak to it. So many of us are trying to change who we are in one way or another, whether it's a new hairstyle, new makeup, weight loss plan, new routine at the gym to build bigger muscles, or we change our personalities so that we can be accepted. How a lot of us view ourselves has become so distorted as we let the negativity fill our minds. I have a video for you today, and it was a commercial released by Dove a few years back. Now, if you know me, I don't have many emotions. I didn't even cry at Fault in Our Stars. I've been referred to as the Tin Man a couple times. I just don't cry very often, but this video, I remember seeing it, and I cried. And even still, every time I watch it, I get a little bit teary-eyed. But as you watch this video today, I want you to think about what you would say to that artist. How would you describe yourself? And not just who you are on the outside, but imagine there was words around your picture, and those words were describing who you are on the inside. So as you watch this video, I want you to think about that. Watching this video, I always reflected and thought about how I would describe myself. But a few months ago, I watched this video, and I thought about it from a different approach. What would those pictures look like if it was God describing us? If God was the one who was coming in and describing who we are, what would the picture look like, and what would the words be around us as God described us? As it says in Psalm 139, verse 14, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. God thinks each of us are incredible creations, and he finds us more incredible than we can even fathom. We get so caught up in thinking about what others will think of us, we forget to think about how God views us. Growing up, I listened to a lot of Bon Jovi at my house. The first concert I attended was Bon Jovi, unless you count NSYNC, but we'll go with Bon Jovi. I knew the lyrics to almost every song except one, but I knew the lyrics to almost every song. But there was a song called Wherever You Are, and in that he sings, "Remember that you are perfect, God makes no mistakes." Now, while I don't agree necessarily with the statement about being perfect, because that's why Jesus Christ was sent. Jesus Christ is the only one, I think, who is perfect to walk the earth, and it's because we're broken and we make mistakes. But the fact that God makes no mistakes has always stood out to me. We get so caught up in critiquing who we are, we're correcting God. God does not make mistakes. He designs everything the way he believes it should be. As the pastor mentioned last week, he believes that God designs everything with a purpose, which I happen to believe as well. God did not make a mistake when he created you or I, so then why are we trying to fix something that has been fearfully and wonderfully made? Again, I don't speak this message lightly, as it's something I wish I believed every day. But I'm constantly looking at who I am, critiquing, finding every flaw. But how different would that picture be if we could describe ourselves as the way that God created and sees us? I mean, who are we to say that God got it wrong? In the beginning, when God created everything, he looked around and he said it was good. Yet here we are putting ourselves down and we're losing our sense of worth. We're ignoring the fact that God molded and formed us to be who we are, and shouldn't that alone make us feel more precious, loved, worthy, and accepted? One way I feel closest to God is through music. To me, worship music connects me back to my faith, and so many times a song will play at just that right moment to remind me of God's love and promises. And when we talk about finding our worth in God, there are so many songs to remind us just what God thinks of us. If you look at that first page in your bulletin, there's some notes about the sermon today, but there's also a list of 8 songs. It was hard to narrow down to 8. There's so many good songs about self-worth, but these 8 songs specifically are ones that I'll put on when I just need a reminder of how beautiful I am through God. And I recommend listening to all of them. And then, if you're on YouTube, sometimes they'll suggest more. Just keep going. They're all great. But the song we heard during the offering today, You Say by Lauren Daigle, is a newer one that I hadn't heard until a few weeks ago. And I want to read the lyrics to that chorus again. I want you to really listen to them. You say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short. And when I don't belong, you say I am yours. And I believe what you say of me. She then goes on saying, in you I find my worth, in you I find my identity. The song reminds us where we should look to find our worth and know who we are. The song also addresses all those negative thoughts a lot of us think of ourselves. I think many of us get so caught up listening to the voices in our head, we ignore what God says about us. However, if we stopped and realized what God was saying about us, we would realize that God has a response for all those doubts and negative thoughts. He will overpower what we say about ourselves because of how he sees us. So if the Bible reminds us, and so many songs remind us of how we should view ourselves because we have been created by God, then why do we spend so much time tearing ourselves down? And I wish I could tell you just flipped a switch and started thinking better of ourselves when we find our worth in God, but it's not that easy. At least for me, it's not. Even as I'm working on this sermon this week, listening to the songs, reading the Bible verse, watching that commercial, I still had so many negative thoughts entering my head all the time. The voice inside my head has become an enemy, and maybe some of you are struggling in that same way. No matter how much we want to change our thoughts to positive ones, those negative ones jump in. So how do we change it? How do we push those negative thoughts away and let the promises of God fill our minds? Turn to the Bible, put on those songs, write reminders on your mirror. And when the negative thoughts enter your mind, try and replace them with 3 positive ones. Because if the choice is made to seek God to know our worth, over time our thoughts can take on a new language of positivity and self-love because of the reminder that God loves us for exactly who we are. And when talking about finding our worth in God, I think it's also important to think about the fact that we are his children. I'm not a parent, but I'm sure for many, if not all parents here today, you find your children to be beautiful, incredible, special, and precious. That's how God sees us. In his eyes, we're the most beautiful and incredible creations. And as I mentioned earlier, when talking about image, it's not just about who we are on the outside, but also who we are on the inside. As God's children, I believe we have been created with each of our own individual, unique personalities. I mean, think about this. God created you because he decided the world needed one of you. He formed us and breathed life into us and made us all uniquely beautiful, giving us all gifts and personality traits to add to his creation. And I think so often we get stuck comparing ourselves to others. But if we were all alike, this would be a pretty boring world. A lot of us get caught up thinking someone's better because of who they are. But the reality is they're not better, they're just different. They have their personality traits that make them who they are, just like we have ours. If we were all capable of all the same things, if we all had the same gifts and talents, no one would feel special or important. God gave us the opportunity to shine in different areas so that we could find confidence in our unique gifts. We're all brothers and sisters of Christ, and just like no brother or sister is exactly alike, well, at least I know my brother and I are not exactly alike. If you know my brother John, quite different, but he made each of us to be our own unique person. And when thinking about the fact we're children of God, I think it's important to think about the fact that God created us in his image. Just as children are reflections of their parents in the way they look, the way they act, I believe that as children of God, who have been created in his image, we're a reflection of our Creator. So if we're created in God's image, what does it say about God when negativity and critiques slip into our mind about ourselves? Think about that. What are we saying about God if we tear ourselves down when we have been created in his image? I'm so often hard on myself, putting myself down, letting that negativity in. And it hit me a few months ago that if I think that about myself, am I not critiquing God because I've been created in his image? And in reality, I would never say those things about God. So then why do I do it? Shouldn't I know that if I've been created in God's image, then I'm filled with his beauty? Shouldn't I love myself just the way I am because I love God? And even knowing I'm made in his image, I still let that negativity overpower the incredible love God has for me that I should have for myself. And I think so many of us spend time complimenting others, which I believe is very important, but then why aren't we complimenting ourselves? Why can't we find comfort in knowing that we are so loved as children of God that he created us in his image? And I don't know about you, but I think the image of God is beautiful, incredible, and indescribable. And when thinking about his creation, as I mentioned earlier, he looked around and he said that it was good. So then why should we let doubt, self-loathing, and negativity take over? I understand how hard it is to change our thoughts about ourselves. It's not something that changes overnight, but maybe if we think about the commercial, if we think about how God would describe us, maybe, just maybe, we can start changing our thoughts about ourselves. Maybe instead of looking in the mirror and finding every flaw, we start to see the beauty of our Creator. Instead of putting a mask on and changing our personalities because we're afraid of what others will say, we start looking to God to know our worth and realize he does not make mistakes, and we are who we are for a reason. I just hope that for any of you that struggle with self-worth as I do, you can start to realize that God took the time to make you exactly as he desired you to be. So stop looking to others, and stop looking to social media, and stop comparing yourself to others, and start living with confidence that as children of God, we're exactly as who he says we should be. We are his children, and because of that, we have been created in his incredible image. He loves us so much, and in his eyes, I believe we are worth more than we can ever understand.